Good morning, students. Today we are going to learn figures of speech. Now, what is figure of speech? Figure of speech is literary devices or poetic devices which a poet or an author uses to elaborate his words. Now, what is the difference between literal and figurative language? Let us learn that. Literal language means the actual dictionary meaning of a word. Language that means what it appears to mean. Okay? Figurative language goes beyond the normal meaning of the word used. It means something else. See, when we say it's raining cats and dogs out there, it actually does not mean that it is raining cats and dogs. It means that it is raining heavily, right? So, a figure of speech, or when we use poetic or literary devices, we actually mean something else, but to beautify our language, we use some words which have some other meaning. Now, a figure of speech or poetic device or literary device is essentially a word or phrase used in non literal sense for rhetorical or vivid effect. Right? So we say something and we mean something else. Right? Now, what are the types of figures of speech? Right? We have four types of figures of speech. First one, based on construction, like climax and anticlimax. Then, based on resemblance, like we have simile, metaphor, personification, apostrophe, right? Then we have some based on contrast, like oxymoron, antithesis, epigram. And then we have some which are based on association, like metonymy and synecdoche. Yes. So this video is going to get a bit longer because we are going to discuss each and every poetic device or literary device in detail. Right? Now, the first and the most common poetic device we are going to discuss is simile. Simile is a comparison which is made between two objects of different kinds, right? Those so the subjects are or the things are totally different, but they have one common quality. That is why we are comparing them, right? So it's a literary device which tells us about comparison. For example, the pizza is as cold as ice. Now there is no similarity between ice and pizza. But here, because the pizza was cold, so we compared it with ice because ice is also very cold. There was one similar quality, that was a thing being cold. That is why we have compared these two dissimilar things. Right? So, there is another example. My dog is as smelly as dirty socks. Right? Now, there is no similarity between a dog and socks in any way. But now, because the dog smells bad and so do the dirty socks. So, we have compared both of these. Right? You have to keep this thing in mind that whenever we are using simile as a comparison, we have to use words like as or like to show the comparison. Okay. Next we have metaphor. What is metaphor? Metaphor is an implied simile. We do not use words like as or like. We just say that something is some other thing. For example, the camel is a ship of the desert. Now, we have not said that camel is like a ship. Like we have ships in the ocean, same way we have camels for desert. We have not said this thing. We have just said that the camel is the ship of the desert. It shows that one thing has the quality of some other thing, but we are not comparing them with the usage of as or like. We are implying one thing on the other thing. Yes. Now, let us see what is the difference between metaphor and simile. First basic difference I have already told you, that in simile we use words like as and like to show comparison, and in metaphor we directly compare two things. We make one thing as other thing, right? We do not actually compare. We say that one thing is other thing, right? For example, simile is Mike is like a teddy bear, and metaphor will be Mike is teddy bear, right? In metaphor also we are comparing two things only, that Mike is like a teddy bear. We want to say that, but we will not say that, right? Because we are playing with words. The meaning is same, but we are just using different set of words, right? Now children, metaphor, simile, and then we have simple comparisons also. For example, if we say the girl sings like Rihanna, right? This we cannot call a simile. Why we cannot call it a simile? Because we are comparing two same things, two same people with similar qualities. Rihanna also sings and the girl also sings. So that we cannot call simile. That is a simple comparison. What is simile? Simile is when we are comparing two different things which do not have any other same quality but for one, right? It has only one same quality and we are comparing it for on that basis. Okay, so you have to keep this thing in mind, that we have simple comparisons also, then we have similes, then we have metaphors. Okay, then we have alliteration. What is alliteration? Now, alliteration is when we have a few sounds, right? In English language we have two sounds. One is alliteration, one is consonant and the other one is vowel sounds, right? So when there is a sound, a consonant sound, in the beginning of a few words in a sentence or in a line of a poem, right, which are same, right? For example, Sue shook her silky silver hair as the sun was setting, right? Here S is the consonant sound and it has been repeated in a few words, right, of this line, of this sentence, right? So whenever you have consonant sounds which are in the beginning of the word, right, and those are repeated in a sentence, right, the words should be closer, right? So then we call it alliteration. All the tongue twisters, right? You have tongue twisters now, you practice them for improving your English. So all the tongue twisters are examples of alliteration only, right? Yes. Next, personification. Personification is such a wonderful poetic device. What do we do in personification? As we see, the word itself says personify, personification. What do we do in personification? When we have some inanimate object, right, a non-living thing, and we give it qualities of human beings. For example, mm, if we say the pen was running quickly, So the pen was actually not running, right? Pen is inanimate object, it cannot run. So maybe your hand was moving fast. But to beautify the sentence, we have said the pen was running quickly, right? In your poem from class ninth, The Road Not Taken, it says the road wanted wear. Wear means to get tired, right? To get worn out, to get used. So roads cannot want anything. They are not human beings, right? So it is just a poetic device, personification, right? Let us see this example. The willow tree shook her long hair. Willow trees do not have hair. Those are normal trees with normal leaves, right? So here we have compared them to a woman or a girl who is shaking her long hair, right? The car danced across the icy road, right? So here cars cannot dance, right? Maybe the car was moving quickly. So it is personification. There is one more poetic device which is similar to uh, personification, right? That I will also discuss with you, but at the end of this chapter. Okay. Now we have apostrophe. What is apostrophe? Have you ever heard? I hope you all must have heard this nursery rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Oh, I wonder what you are. Remember that? Yes. So that is a beautiful example of apostrophe. What is apostrophe? When the poet is addressing to a person or a thing or some object or some idea, but that is not actually present, right? The person is not present there, right? Or either the person or the object, right? Objects cannot hear whatever you are telling them, right? So the poet is addressing that person or object, but that is not there to listen to him, right? So when we say twinkle twinkle little star, what I wonder what you are, so the little child is talking to the stars, but stars cannot listen to you, neither they are present near us, right? So that is a very good example of apostrophe. Hyperbole. First of all, please note the pronunciation. It is not hyperbole, it is hyperbole. Okay, English is a very peculiar language. Do not expect simple things from this language, right? Okay, so what is hyperbole? Hyperbole is exaggeration of a fact. What is exaggeration? When you say that something is very big, very intense, but actually it is not, right? For example, you fight with your friend in the school, but when you go to your house, right, the fight was very little about a very petty issue. But when you go to your house, you exaggerate the thing to your mother that he started beating me, then principal ma'am came, then she said this, then this happened. So you exaggerate, you make the things intense, right? So you say that so you can create empathetic atmosphere, right? Or you want to draw some overstatement, right? When your teachers tell you this sentence, your teacher must be using every day, na, that I have told you a million times, I have told you 100 times. No teacher has told anybody anything 100 times or a million times, but we say this. Why? Because this is just a way to say things. It is a literary device. Okay? Yes. You could have knocked me over with a feather. Nobody can beat anyone or knock over a person with a feather. Feathers are too delicate to do that, right? But it is hyperbole. Euphemism. What is euphemism? Euphemism is when you are saying something are trying to use some words which are less offensive, right? Sometimes we say that don't tell me fairy tales. Actually, we want to tell that I don't want to listen any lies from you, any lame excuse, any lie. But then what we actually say, you are telling me a fairy tale. Because if we directly accuse that person that you are lying, so it will be very offensive. So we use sugar coated language or polished language, right? That is euphemism. Okay. Antithesis. Antithesis is very, very important um poetic device. Anti, you know what is the meaning of word anti, right? Opposite. Thesis means a statement. Antithesis is when something is being said, but it actually denies the statement which is already said earlier. For example, right? Let me give you an example. Yes, so I was going to tell you some example from antithesis. If you remember a quote, a very famous quote by Neil Armstrong, he said that when he, of course, he was the first man to land on moon, right? So what did he say? He said a very small step for man, but a giant step for mankind. So that is antithesis, right? We have two opposing ideas in two parts of a same sentence, right? For example, you must have heard this thing also, that hope for the best but be prepared for the worst, right? It's a very famous saying. Speech is silver but silence is gold, right? So these are examples of antithesis, that two opposing ideas are there but in two parts of the same sentence, right? A very similar kind of poetic device is also there, that is oxymoron. But oxymoron consists of two words only. Both the words are actually antonyms, but they are used, one first word is used as an adjective to the other. For example, if you remember third poem of your book, class 10th, right? Tiger in the cage, right? So in that we have oxymoron in the quiet rage, being quiet, and if you have a rage, anger, these are two opposite qualities, na, right? But here quiet rage, quiet word is used. This word is antonym of rage, but it has been used, the first word is used as an adjective to the other word, right? So quiet rage is your oxymoron. Known secret, deafening silence. How can silence be deafening, right? Noise can be deafening but silence cannot be. But uh, awfully nice, awful you also know the meaning of, right? Something can be either awful or nice right? So pretty ugly, right? If there can be only one thing possible, either a person can be pretty or ugly, right? So always know the difference between antithesis and oxymoron. Antithesis is a complete sentence with two parts, right? So both the phrases are um, you know, having opposite meaning to each other, but oxymoron has two words only, right? Both are antonyms, but the first one is used as adjective to the second one, right? Do remember this. Epigram. Epigram is a brief pointed saying that actually introduce some idea, right? A very good pointed saying which has a lot of knowledge, right? If you analyze that sentence, it will be full of good descriptions, good ideas. If you want to expand that, you can fill 2 3 pages easily, but it is written in a very short and brief words, right? For example, Mm, live simply so that others may simply live, right? So, any brief pointed saying which you have heard consists of an epigram, right? Irony is very, very important. Irony is a literary device which is, if you want to study literature when you grow up, when you go to college or universities, right, then irony will be repeated many, many times. There are so many aspects to irony, right, which you will learn, but I will tell you the only basic one. So, irony is a mode of speech or a literary device in which the real meaning is exactly opposite of that which is actually conveyed, right? So, sometimes irony is situational, sometimes irony is verbal. For example, if there is a child who does not study at all, right? But the teacher says, okay, here comes our topper, right? So that is verbal irony, right? Everybody knows in the class that this child does not study, but the teacher is calling the child a topper, right? So this is verbal irony. And another example, which you will read in many books, that the law minister, right, got arrested for breaking the law. So that is situational irony, right? Something happened which was not supposed to happen, which was not actually possible, but it has happened, right? So that is irony. Pun. What is pun? Pun is a use of word in a way that it conveys both the meanings, right? So if I tell you in normal meaning, right, you will understand it better that way, that if a word conveys double meaning, then we will call it a pun, right? For example, is life worth living? It depends upon the liver. Now here liver means that a person who lives, right? And liver here also means your liver, that your body part, right? So if your liver is healthy, so of course your life is worth living, right? If your liver is not that good, so you must be, living in some ailments or diseases, so that will be not a very good thing, right? So that is pun. Metonymy. Metonymy is very important poetic device. Now, metonymy is when we use a word like some non-living thing, right, for a person. We directly do not want to name the person, right? We use some other word for it. For example, the crown. The crown has taken decision. The crowns cannot take decision. Kings and queens do. So, rather than saying king or queen has taken decision, we have said the crown has taken decision. In the same way, you must have heard this statement, uh, the sword is mightier than, the pen is mightier than the sword, right? So, pen is not mightier than the sword, right? If you see, a pen is a very little thing and sword is very powerful. But here we want to say that people who are literate, who are educated, those who use pen are more powerful than the people who have these kind of arms and ammunitions, right? So, mental strength is more powerful, more stronger than physical power. This is what we want to say. So, metonymy is when we replace a person with a non-living thing. Next, we have synecdoche. Now, please do see the pronunciation. It's synecdoche. Okay. So, synecdoche is when we use the part for whole or the whole for part. Right. For example, if we say India won the match against Australia, so we all know that India, the entire country, was not playing any match with the entire country, entire people of Australia. Those were just 11 men if we are talking about cricket, right? So, a cricket team is being talked about. But we have used whole. Whole means entire. WHOLE, right? Entire country for a little team. India won the match. India did not win any match. Indian cricket team or Indian football or Indian hockey team win the match, right? So you have to keep this thing in mind. And we also use part for whole and whole for part, right? That I will also give you an example. Yes. So when we say that he has purchased four wheels, so it is not that he has purchased four wheels. We are saying, we want to say that he has purchased a car, right? But sometimes in slang language or in poetic language also, we say he has purchased four wheels. So that means a car. Okay, not he has purchased only four wheels, right? So that you have to keep in mind that synecdoche is the use of whole for part and part for whole. Next we have transferred epithet. What is epithet? Epithet is a quality, right? Just like adjectives. What is transferred epithet? When we transfer a quality of one thing to the other thing. For example, in class 9th there is a poem, Rain on the Roof, right? In that the poet says, the night was sad, the night was crying. Night was not sad, night was not crying. It was the poet who was sad. Poet was crying, right? But he transferred his quality to night. Okay? So, dreamless sleep. Sleep is not dreamless, right? You are dreamless, but you say it was a dreamless sleep. A very, very important example is happy birthday. The birthday is not happy, it is just a common day. But the person whose birthday it is, that person is happy, right? But we always say happy birthday. So that is transferred epithet. Next we have examples of metonymy that I have already told you. Yes, litotes. Litotes is an affirmative that is conveyed by negation. Negation is when we use the word no or not. Okay, and affirmative sentences are positive sentences. For example, when we say this ice cream is not bad, so I actually mean that the ice cream is good, but I have said not bad, right? That is, I am telling you a sentence which is negative, but it is conveying a positive meaning. Then we have interrogation. Interrogation are normal sentences which have a question in them, right? Which you can see in many poems that you already know. So we will skip this. Climax. Climax is when we have to arrange series of ideas in order of increasing importance, right? For example, there are three things that will endure: faith, hope, and love, right? So here we have started with the increasing order, right? Faith, then hope, and love. Love is the greatest. There is a very famous statement by Julius Caesar: I came, I saw, I conquered, right? So he came to a place and he saw what was the situation there, and then by understanding the situation, he conquered the place, right? That is also example of litotes. Then we have anticlimax. Anticlimax is the opposite of climax, right? So we have to go in decreasing order of importance. For example, he lost his family, his car, and his cell phone. So cell phone has a very little importance, car has a medium importance, and family has the utmost importance, right? So this is anticlimax. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is the most wonderful poetic device because it is very easy. Onomatopoeia is a word which is given to a sound. So there is a word for a sound, right? When we say splash, splash does not have any dictionary meaning. It is sound of the water splashing, right? When we say tring, tring is when a phone rings, right? When we say buzz, in class ninth we have a poem um, written by W.B. Yeats, Lake Isle of Innisfree, right? Lake Isle means Lake Island of Innisfree, right? Where the poet wants to go back to his childhood place. So in that, there he wants to have a house where bees are buzzing, right? So same way where we have snakes hissing, right? So all these sounds, jingle, every jingle on the shingles, right? This is the line from your poem The Rain on the Roof from class ninth, right? So all these words actually do not have any meaning, any dictionary meaning. These are just words given to the sounds, different sounds. So that is onomatopoeia. Okay. Now we have assonance. Assonance is when vowel sounds are repeated in a sentence. When we were reading about alliteration, when we were studying about alliteration, we heard that there are a few words, right, which are, in which the sound, same sound is there in the beginning of the word, right? But that was consonant sound. Here we have assonance. Assonance has vowel sound, right? For example, it beats as it sweeps as it cleans. So I and A sounds are repeated here. I is also a vowel sound, A is also a vowel sound, right? So we have to see neighboring words in a line or in a sentence in which a few words have the same sound in the beginning. Okay, do understand the importance of beginning. Okay. Next we have imagery. Imagery is of five types, right? You have five senses: touch, then you have taste, you have smell, you have sound, you have sight, right? All these. So when a poet or writer writes about these poetic device, about these senses, okay, he is writing something which appeals to any of your senses. For example, if he says that the food was very spicy, so you will get a taste of how spicy the food will be, right? That is also imagery. If he is describing sunset in front of your eyes, you will get image of sunset. That is also imagery. If he says that I heard rain on the roof, in Rain of the Roof, poet says that I heard the pitter patter of the raindrops on the roof. So that sound you can imagine in your mind that what kind of sound it will be. So that is also imagery. If you see that the poet is sitting with a dog or cat in his lap and he is touching the fur of that animal, so that touch, soft, silky touch, you can also imagine that. So that is also imagery. So any scene, any line written by the poet or the writer, which appeals to your senses, and you can imagine that in your mind. That is imagery. Okay. Now we have paradox. There are three literary devices which are actually a bit similar: paradox, antithesis, and oxymoron. I have told you the difference between antithesis and oxymoron. Now let us move on to paradox. Paradox is when, contrary to expectations or existing belief, right, the statement appears to be self contradictory. Something is being said, but that is, you are not able to understand, because these are two different ideas, right? For example, when we say war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is bliss. Very very important line. You will see the t-shirts and mugs, this line is written, this epigram is written on t-shirts and mugs also. Ignorance is bliss. How can ignorance be bliss? Bliss means happiness. Ignorance cannot be happiness, but it has a deeper meaning, right? So whenever it means that if you will get all the knowledge of the world is full of miseries, right? So that will create many troubles for your mind. So it is better that ignored people who have ignorance, they are better. You have read chapter number 10, sermon in Banaras, right? In that, in the beginning of the chapter, what is being told? That Gautam Buddha, he was a prince. His name was Siddhartha, right? He belonged to a clan, Shakya clan. So he was a prince. He had a princess, and he was also father to a son, right? He had such a good kingdom. But when he was living in the palace, he was not aware that how many miseries are there in the world. But when he one day he went out, he got all the information, he got all the knowledge how the world is full of miseries, right? When then he got all the information, all the knowledge, and then afterwards he could not live a you know comfortable life. He left his wife, his child, his kingdom, all the luxuries which he had, and he went out to attain enlightenment, right? So that is how I have explained you how we say that ignorance is bliss. Okay. So paradox is a statement in which the two different ideas are combined together, right? So that was all for today, right? So I hope this video have made you understand all the poetic devices which are in your syllabus. These poetic devices actually covered from class 9th to class 12th.